Welcome back, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. This past weekend, my wife and I went to the Central PA Comic Con. It was a lot of fun. I will put the link below if you're in or around Central Pennsylvania and it sounds like something that would be enjoyable. I thoroughly enjoyed it. My wife really enjoyed it. I will warn you, if you're used to higher caliber events, like for example, my wife and I went to New York Comic Con this past October. Central PA Comic Con is a little bit smaller scale than that by quite a bit. However, I still really enjoyed it. I felt the New York Comic Con, while it was a very fun experience, it was almost a little bit overwhelming. And just in the sense that there was so much to see and not a lot of time. And if you wanted to be a part of a panel or get a signature by somebody, it was like a multi-hour commitment just to stand in line. So you felt then that you were really having to pick and choose, prioritize what you wanted to do. And like I said, it was still fun. But at the Central PA Comic Con, it was a lot smaller of an event, a lot less people. But because of that, you were able to check out all the vendors. My wife and I made multiple rounds. We were actually working at a booth that my father-in-law was doing, which was also a lot of fun. But we were, even with working a booth part of the time, we were still able to make multiple trips to all the vendors. We were able to go to multiple panels, and panels weren't very big, but they were still really cool. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, it was a really cool way to spend a weekend. And I will tell you, my wife and I are not big comic book people. I think I have been to one comic book store in my life, maybe two, but I'm thinking just one. And I like the idea of comics, but to me, comics are a little bit too short. I like big books. I like being able to invest myself in big books. So a comic just seems like too brief of a story for me to really get into. It just seems like the moment it starts getting good, it's over. We actually bought several comics, several books, and a couple of posters. So this is kind of like our Comic-Con haul. My wife and I went to a panel. It was actually the second panel of the day, and it was hosted by a guy named Dave, and I cannot remember his last name, but he is slightly on the autistic spectrum, and he has created a non-profit company called Face Value Comics. And the idea is twofold. It's to help autistic people better fit into social interactions, while at the same time kind of giving non-autistic people a brief look into what it's like to live with autism. And the talk was really cool. He's actually, I think he's working on his PhD, but his master's project was all around how humans display emotions, like all the main emotions, the same way, whether you're a man or a woman, or whether you're from Australia or Canada or Norway or Japan. And so the idea was, in these books or in these comics, there are very clearly situations where someone will get angry. Then the character, who has just clearly stated that he's angry, his expression is based on the scientific model of what everyone looks like when they're angry. So the idea is it helps autistic people better read emotions, and it was very cool. So they have 3 issues so far. So we got all 3 of them. It's pretty cool. The comic itself is set in 2072. And they have basically cured disease, they have ended war. It's kind of a almost utopian society. And he said one of the questions they get is, why didn't they cure autism? And he says, that autism is part of them, and he doesn't think you can cure a part of a person, which is why in his kind of perfect world, autism still exists. It's pretty cool. And there's actually a hero in here called the Zephyr, who is featured on top of an eagle/griffin. And the Zephyr is actually an autistic person. And he said one of the things he's proud of is they've created the first autistic comic book hero. And he says he can't call it a superhero because Marvel and DC actually have a copyright on that, which I thought was kind of funny. But that was really cool. Then I also came across several Gene Autry comics, which I didn't even know existed. They're all from the late 40s, I believe. But I was a big Gene Autry fan growing up, so it was kind kind of one of those things where I was like, oh cool, that's a neat idea. I also found this Classics edition of White Fang in comic format, which I thought was really cool. It's actually the first thing I bought, and it's in really good shape. Then I also just found a Star Wars comic, and my wife came across a couple of like romance comics, which to be honest, I didn't even know existed, but these are both from the 40s. The guy who was selling them, they were actually his grandmother's, which I thought was pretty cool, especially they're in really good shape. But one is a Love Diary comic. Yes, I said that right, Love Diary. It's a thing. And also a young romance. Evidently the young romance were really popular. My wife had heard of these and was really excited when she found them, and she got a pretty good deal on them. I was really excited about that. However, my wife and I are primarily book people, and there was several independent authors there, and we decided to buy some books that we potentially would both be interested in reading, something to kind of do joint reviews on the channel. So the first three are by Michael D'Ambrosio, and it's a time travel trilogy, the Fractured Time trilogy. The first book is Fractured Time, the second is Twisted Fate, and the third is Dark Horizon. The next book we bought is Artificial Absolutes by Mary Fawn. The cover looks a little bit cheesy, but again, first of all, it's independently published, so you kind of expect that. But the synopsis on the back seems interesting. The last one we bought was something that I don't know if my wife will read, but I thought it was kind of a fun synopsis, and it was a pretty small book, but it is Billy and the Clonosaurus, I should say, by Stephen Kozenwinski. I think that's how you pronounce his name. It's basically about a clone set in a future world where there's not supposed to be any animals, and he finds a dinosaur. Again, it seemed just like a fun synopsis to me. And my wife and I were able to get all of these books signed except the Artificial Absolutes because the author wasn't able to make it to the event. Next, got a couple of posters. The first one being this beauty here. Yes, it is magnificent. My wife and I are both Doctor Who fans. The Daleks are absolutely amazing. I think they're my favorite race of all time. They're just absolutely incredible. So I couldn't turn down that poster. The last thing that I bought is actually the thing that I'm the most excited about and probably enjoyed most about Central PA Comic Con. And that is the actor, stuntman, stunt double, I guess. He probably filled a lot of roles. Felix Silla was there. If you're a really hardcore Star Wars fan, you might recognize the name. He was one of the actors who played one of the main Ewoks, and I was able to get it signed. He signed it to me, which is like super cool. He was the Ewok who was on one of the Ewoks on the hang gliders, who was tossing rocks on the ATSTs. Yeah, it was really cool. He also had a panel where he was talking about his experiences in Hollywood with J.G. Hertzler, I think. I might be wrong about that name, but he played one of the main Klingons in the original Star Trek series. So that was just really cool. They had a good repertoire going between them. It was very funny. And Felix Silla especially, he was in Star Wars, he was in the Star Trek pilot, he was in Buck Rogers, he was in the Addams Family, he was in an episode of Bonanza, he was in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, he was the body double for Short Round. He was involved in Planet of the Apes. There were so many like iconic movies that he would be talking about and be like, oh yeah, and then this one time I was on the set of this movie. So that was really cool. And I mean, come on, it's a signed Ewok photo. I mean, who wouldn't love that? That's everything. Hope you enjoyed the haul. Like I said, my wife and I had a really good weekend and had a lot of fun there. Like I said, if you're in the area and if you're interested in the Comic-Con thing, it was really cool. It was definitely smaller, but it was also pretty well run. There was a lot of last minute changes in the panels and stuff, which was a little bit annoying. Thanks for watching. Feel free to like, comment, or subscribe, or none of the above. That's always an option too. I'm always a fan of multiple choice questions.